Hey folks, welcome to Half and Half this morning. We're out here in Blue Mountains. We have the door slightly ajar. Very exciting. It's getting just a little bit warmer and also it's a little bit cold. So I think we should get moving. um, I have a stool. Scott just pointed out to me that I ask all of you to get a chair, and here I am on a stool. Either one is okay. So I have kind of a hard seat. I think that's helpful, not like a super cushy thing. And then I also basically look at that my knees aren't way up here. So I kind of imagine people in their living room getting on like an ottoman and sort of being like this. Maybe not the best choice. Maybe a dining room chair is better. So knees either in line with your hips or maybe a little lower. And then feet can be all the way on the floor. And then it's kind of nice if there's a little bit of firmness that you're sitting on so you can feel your sits bones. So now that we have discussed the requirements of a very good chair, maybe we should do some stuff. So I'm right at the front edge of my chair, and I do that again for a couple different reasons that you've probably heard me spout off before, and I'm going to spout them again. So being at the front of the chair, I have to actually hold myself up. Having a hard surface, maybe you can see I keep wiggling on my sits bones so that I feel the right sits bone and the left sits bone. And it's exactly like it sounds. It's that bony part of your butt. If you're into anatomy, it's your ischial tuberosity on either side. And then I'm also kind of forward so I can feel just a tiny bit of support from my feet. And sitting, we all the time talk about good posture and we talk about the spine. But part of good posture is actually having your feet supporting you as well. That not all my weight is back to where my feet are super light. One of the reasons we get a lot of hip flexor tension is because my weight is behind my center, basically my axis. And so my weight's maybe back on my sits bones, and I am in essence falling backwards a little bit. And what keeps me from falling backwards is these muscles, these hip flexor muscles right here. They hold me up. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But then they get tight if I do that for a long time. Now, the same thing is true if I'm kind of leaned back and in this position, right? So maybe I lean back, these grab, and I go, that's a lot of work. So I pull my chest forward so that these don't have to work quite as much, even though they still kind of work. And then I get like this. We all know this, right? My shoulders are a little up, my head's a little forward, and this is where I get stuck. So there's really a lot to posture, right? My feet are super light, all that stuff. I mean, my legs are crossed, all these. This is very attractive, isn't it? So if I undo all those things, right? I want to feel sits bones right on top of the sits bones. I am even slightly forward of my sits bones. Now I feel my feet are just a little bit, they can still move, but they feel important to my posture. They're taking a little bit of the weight. That makes it easier to actually open up my chest and bring my head in line. It actually doesn't make as much sense in this position to come forward. So all those things really going together. Now, we could add in a little bit of breath, right? Because I get in this position, it's now easier to breathe. I have more space in the diaphragm, the rib cage, back ribs, side ribs, front ribs. If I use that space, then I'm encouraging myself to continue sitting well. If I only use the space that I tend to use in this position, then I'm going to encourage my body to go back to this position. So it's that feedback, feed forward loop, I think, right? Those two different things interplaying. So let's put those things together. So find your seat, your sits bones, your feet. Maybe you can feel these muscles or think about these muscles relaxing a little. Rib cage over pelvis, head over rib cage. Close your eyes for a moment, just so you can focus more internally. If you don't like having your eyes closed, you can always just look down a little, lower your gaze a little. Whatever helps you visualize your internal space. And without forcing a big change, imagine your breath moving pretty evenly through your rib cage. The back lower ribs. the side lower ribs, the back middle ribs, the side middle ribs, the chest, the armpits, and the upper back ribs beneath the shoulder blades, like deeper than the shoulder blades. And then what do you notice? What's easy to visualize? What's challenging to visualize? What do you feel really quickly? What can you not feel? It's easy to get frustrated with it not all coming right away. So maybe you think, oh, I can really do my chest and I can really do my side ribs, but I don't know about the upper back. Often we get really frustrated really quickly. But, things take time. We all know that. So just hang out with it a little bit longer. Keep the image. It'll come. And then letting your eyes open with just still a little bit of attention to the breath, how it's moving. And as that's happening, maybe you notice your pelvis wants to adjust a little or your head wants to adjust a little. So as your breath feels more even, maybe that shifts your relationship and your posture between your head, ribs, and pelvis. And then full circle, think about your feet. Are they still grounded in the floor? Maybe they even are a little more connected, feel a little more spacious on the floor. Now, let's start a little movement with the breath. So we're going to try moving on the exhale. Simple rotation. So breathing in, and as you exhale, rotate around to the right, look around the corner, however far you go, and inhale back to center. And then exhale the other way. And inhale back to center. Really simple, right? Posture stays as it is. You just let the rib cage and the neck and the head spiral. Now we're going to stay there a little longer this time. So as you exhale around next time, stay there. And in this rotated position, breathe. Same stuff, right? Even though you're rotated, can you feel the breath moving, kind of swirling around the whole rib cage? How about the lower back ribs and side ribs? And then coming back to center. Same thing the other way. Rotating around. And then in this rotated position, how's the breath moving through the back ribs, the side ribs? And coming back to center. And let's do a roll down, a little spine stretch down, the head dropping, neck releasing, chest softening. Working your way down through the spine. You can roll down however far is comfortable for you. Might be chest all the way onto the thighs, or it might not be quite that far. But if you are pretty far down, probably you feel that you're not really on your sits bones anymore, and your feet take a little more weight. Now, as you come up, pay attention to that weight in your feet. See if you can leave it, and then start from the sits bones. Let your sits bones find the chair, even though your feet have some weight. Unroll your spine. Pelvis lines up, ribs come right over the pelvis, head comes right over the ribs. Let's take that a couple times, exhaling, rolling forward. Let yourself release all the way down. Let your heels ground and your hips release. And then keeping your feet grounded, start from your sits bones. Really reach just your sits bones back. Let them find the chair. And then allow your spine to respond. And one more time. Now we're going to come up a little differently this time. We're going to make our way off the chair. So I have my head really down. I'm feeling my heels on the floor. My chest is relaxed. And then just kind of play with it a little bit. You could walk the hands a little forward. You could keep your hands back by your feet. You're going to think of your weight shifting forward, which means your knees have to shift forward. And then your pelvis can come up once your weight's all the way on your feet. And you're in a forward bend. Now imagine the chair, that your sits bones could still find the chair. We're not going to go back to the chair. We're going to think about that feedback. So bend your knees, feel the weight in your feet, and then imagine your sits bones were reaching back to the chair again. And that's how you roll your spine up. And in that same posture, ribs over pelvis, head over ribs, and you're all the way up to standing. Now let's play with that same thing coming down. So bend your knees. Imagine your sits bones had the chair. You have your feet. And then just like when you were on the chair, rolling through. And all the way upside down. And then to come up, bend the knees, feel your feet, find the chair with your sits bones. They make heat-seeking missiles. You have chair-seeking sits bones. Last time coming up. How's your breath? So maybe you can feel it. I hope you can feel how really starting with the lower part of the pelvis as you roll up creates more openness in your spine. This is so important in Pilates, the idea of one vertebra at a time moving, that you're moving at every joint, and that creates more mobility in the spine. More mobility gives me more sort of overall strength and like options, like when my spine has more options um, of how to respond to a movement or to find strength. Um, but when I move with my sits bones, if I don't move those sits bones, right, my pelvis is tipped forward here. Sometimes as I'm coming up, maybe I start with the sits bones dropping, but then they get stuck, right? They're not really on the chair. And then I keep rolling up. Notice how now my spine's getting kind of stiff here. And then maybe I come up in one piece. Maybe my chest starts to go forward. This is a lot of exaggeration, right? But this kind of thing happens. And I might end up standing with my chest forward and my sits bones back, right? So I don't want to be in that position there. I want to let my sits bones come all the way in, right? So he keeps moving me, and I keep wanting to show the side view. And so as I'm coming up, I want to keep dropping the sits bones down so that my spine can keep moving. And I keep opening and unrolling all the way up. Yeah, makes sense, hopefully. So this is true in the roll up on the floor. This is the strength we're trying to create as we do the roll up on the floor. Yeah. So we're going to go back down to that position, however you like. And so now my sits bones, right? There, I'm sitting up on my sits bones. I'm going to send them towards my heels so that my back can open. And then because I keep letting my pelvis move, I'm going to unroll all the way down onto my back. Now I don't want to take the pelvis too far where the sits bones come up. I also don't want to not take it far enough where I end up arched in my back here. So here I am, my pelvis is really lined up as I start to roll up to sitting. I don't want to tuck or arch the pelvis. I want to really roll through the spine. As I come back down, I'm going to start with that sits bones reaching forward. Let the lower back really open. All the way down. And coming up, inhale. Exhale. And coming forward. And to roll back down. Sits bones. and working through the back. A couple more. And coming back down. Okay, so hopefully that's making some sense, right? Trying to line up the pelvis and the ribs and the head, get them in one line. Trying to keep the pelvis from either tucking or arching, and that'll keep a little more space in the spine, a little more mobility in the spine through here, and not pushing the chest forward, right? So all the time we talk about drawing the ribs together, and that has to do with not pushing the chest out either. So we're going to go into single leg circles. We're also going to look at what happens when the legs get involved with this. So as you take a knee in, right? Maybe your legs are all the way flat on the floor and your pelvis feels just like right in place. I have the floor there. It's very simple. The pelvis is in place, the ribs are in place, the head is in place. But once one knee starts to come in, maybe you can feel it. And especially if you pull the knee very far in, the sits bone starts to lift up, the pelvis starts to tip backwards. And so just try that, right? Pull it all the way in, feel how your pelvis comes up. Maybe you can even feel it in your other leg. And then take it all the way back down. Do it with the other leg. It's not a bad movement, right? But it's not a postural neutral. It's a round spine position. And then take it down. Now, see what it's like to not move the pelvis. Feel where your pelvis is. Feel where your ribs are. Draw the knee in, put the foot on the floor. Okay, how's that? Sometimes people's pelvis tips already. So just notice that. Can you settle it back where it was when your leg was down? Without like creating tension. Don't force it, but just think of it settling back into place. And then bringing the knee over your hip. And again, the reason I often do this stretch with the knee right over the hip is because of the pelvis. I want to keep it in place. Now, if you're in this position here and you still feel like the pelvis is really lifted up, you could bend this other knee. Sometimes that really helps. And just let it settle back into place. Same thing as my leg goes up, the straighter my leg gets, the more likely I am to curl my pelvis and lift it up. My sits bones are now lifting up, right? So I don't go all the way straight. So we go up and down thinking about leaving your pelvis where it is, leaving your sits bones where they are. Very different feeling. Leaving your chest in place. Now, what if we went back to the breath like we did sitting? Feeling the breath still move through the back ribs. Next time your leg is up, leave the leg in place. Take your hands away. Abdominals having to work to hold my pelvis still against the weight of my leg. Ribs draw together. Same thing as you circle your leg, reaching to the right, reaching a little down, reaching a little open, and back up. Whole time, let my pelvis stay where it is. Let my sits bones stay where they are. Ribs stay where they are. Inhale across, exhale, circle. Even breath through the rib cage. Same thing in reverse. Little ribs together in the front as you exhale. And then relax your leg down. Now, take a moment here, see how things feel. Maybe you notice a difference between the right and left leg, but also pay attention to where your pelvis naturally falls again once both legs are down. It's probably a little different than when you have a leg up, even though you're thinking about keeping it in place. Okay, shall we do the other leg? Bring the leg in, hold behind the thigh. Let the sits bone just kind of be moving forward to that front wall. If you were standing up, it would be straight down, but you're lying on your back, so it's kind of towards that front wall. And as your leg goes up and down, not letting your pelvis tip, just leave it where it is. And again, if you're feeling tense in your lower back in order to leave your pelvis in place, just back off a little, right? You don't need to tense up your lower back to do it. Maybe don't take your leg as straight. Maybe you check in with your ribs and your breath. That might make a difference. We'll leave the leg up there. Hands come by your side. You reach over to the left, circle down, open, and back up. I have my right leg up, so I'm reaching to the left. If you have your left leg up, you're going to be reaching to your right to start. And once more. And then take the reverse. Exhale, lower ribs up. Inhale, back ribs open. And then bending your knee. And take both legs down. Just take a couple breaths, let everything relax. And then knees into your chest, come up to sitting. Let's do one more roll up. Come over onto your hands and feet. Take a little stretch up. Bend your knees, send them forward a little bit. Feel your feet on the floor. Sits bones. Seek the chair to roll you up. So your lower back can open. Mid back can open. And then stacking the ribs over the pelvis. And the head over the ribs. Okay, let's look at a taller pelvis.
So that was some really cool spine work. And let's get the chair again. And this is some stuff I haven't taught in maybe 15 years, maybe even 20 years. So let's start off with the chair just a little bit in front of you, or the stool, or even a bench. And take a few moments to feel your feet upon the floor. Then bring your left foot up on the chair or the bench or the stool, whatever it may be. Now, what so often happens is what you explored on your back is that there's a tucking under the pelvis. So basically the same exact thing you did on your back, we're now doing that same thing in standing. And so coming to a neutral spine, spine aligned, neck in that same line, head in that same line. Yeah, let's take a few breaths here. And then stepping back down. Here's a chance to work on your balance. So both feet upon the floor. Slowly stepping the other foot up to the chair. Now when the spine rounds back, like what you explored on your back, typically the hip is hiking up. Do you feel that? So invite that femur head to drop down to the floor as you lift up through the crown of your head. So if you put those two together, femur head drops down, crown of your head lifts up. Do you feel how your spine automatically aligns? Let's take a few breaths here. And then slowly step down. Here's a chance to work on your balance. So first side again. Now, let's see if you can lift your knee up and keep that femur head dropping down. So it's very purely a hip flexion movement without your shoulders rounding forward, without your spine rounding. And again, a chance to work on your balance. So once you find the chair with your foot, let your foot be curious about that chair. Spread your toes out. Feel the ball of your foot upon the chair. And then lightly lift your heel up. So this too can help challenge your balance. With your heel lifted, continue dropping your femur head down. And now slowly over a count of 5, descend that stool heel down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Contact. Did you know he had a stool heel? So then bring both arms forward. Big deep inhale. Exhale, arms up. Let your chin rise up too. Inhale down. Everything down. Another chance to work your balance. Few breaths here on both feet. Then keep that side femur head dropping down as you lift your knee up. So it's purely hip flexion. Maybe you're feeling how your belly engages. And slowly place that foot. Take a moment to let your foot settle onto the bench, stool, chair, what have you. And keep that femur head dropping down as you lift the corresponding heel up. And slowly descending that heel down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Contact. I used to teach this stuff back like in the mid to late 90s. It's more than 20 years ago. Take both arms forward, big deep inhale. Exhale up. Inhale everything down. Now, what we're going to take a look at is a continuation of the theme, and a chance to create a little bit more length in your iliopsoas muscles. So let's bring that left leg up again. We'll take it nice and slowly. Femur head drops down as your knee lifts up. Chance to work from your belly. Place your foot. Keep that femur head dropping down as you lift up through the crown of your head. Keep that length in your spine as you bring both arms forward. Deep inhale. Exhale up. Let's keep gaze forward for the time being. Ready for the fun part? Your foot on the floor. Lift that heel a couple inches up. And see if you can keep the reach up through your fingertips and the crown of your head. And now slowly descend your floor heel down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Contact. Couple breaths here. And lowering down, working on your balance. How's that? It's a really nice way to work on balance dynamically. So now let's take other foot up. Femur head drops down, concurrent with knee lifting up. Place your foot, all of your foot. For me, it's kind of hard. It barely fits on the stool. That's what happens when you have a size 15 foot. Femur head drops down, lifting up. Keeping that length in your spine, bring your arms forward. Keep your gaze straight ahead as you exhale, lift your arms up. Keeping the reach up through your fingertips. Lift your floor heel up a couple inches. And then slowly descend it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Contact. Full deep inhale here. Exhale back to standing. And both feet on the floor. Right. So let's continue in that theme, coming into seated on the stool. Again, this is stuff I think I've taught this in 20 some odd years. So on the stool, bench, chair, what have you. Continuation of the theme, let those femur heads drop down. At the same time as you lift up through the crown of your head, create length. And then see if you can keep that length, especially your femur heads dropping down. As you take your right knee and foot up just a couple inches. And see if you can keep that length. Exhale, knee a little straighter. Inhale, bend. Exhale. Inhale, 2 more. And lowering the foot down. Now this is going back to a point Collette was talking about a little bit earlier. Very often when the knee lifts up, we end up dropping back. And then if we try and sit up tall, it's this funny kind of chest, neck, head thing going on. And that's how a lot of us sit. So sitting bones down, sitting up tall, concurrent with sitting bones down, femur heads down. So right where your thigh bones meet in the hip sockets, that's the head of your femur. Root those femur heads down. Keep that downflow of the femur heads as you now take your left knee up a little bit. See if you can keep this length in your spine. Exhale, straighten. Inhale, bend. Couple more. Feel how your knee wants to drop down as your foot outstretches. See if you can keep that lift. And then set that foot down. So I'm going to steal this from Collette. She does this real a technique I really like a lot. So feel how your sitting bones are rooted. So folding from your hip sockets, not from your waist, from your hip sockets. Lean a little bit forward. Feel how there's more weight in your feet. And keep transferring more weight into your feet. Press them down to come up, 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 up. Feet press down, pelvic crest lift up, head held high. All right, building on that theme. Step your feet wide apart. Turn your left foot in and your right foot out. Pelvis tends to tip this way, doesn't it? So lift that right pelvic crest up such that your pelvis is horizontal. Keeping your pelvis horizontal as you bend and straighten. Bend and straighten, adding in the breath. Exhale, inhale. The next time knee in the bent position, pause there. And tip your torso into the diagonal. And take a few moments here to settle into the diagonal. And bring your left arm forward, sweep it through. And take a little peek at the ceiling. And then with the inhale, come on up. Back to the front. Second side. Turn your right foot in and then your left foot out. Match movement to breath. Exhale, bend. Inhale, straighten. You feel how that left pelvic crest tends to drop. So levelize your pelvis. Keep that horizontalitude. Couple more. Pausing. That from the vertical to the diagonal. I listened to a scientific talk last week and a reference to data that doesn't match your expectation. The term was off the diagonal. So a few moments here to be in the diagonal. And bring your right arm forward, sweep it through. And a little peek at the ceiling. And inhale, come on up. Exhale, back to the front. And then step your feet back together. Root your feet down. Lift those pelvic crests up to lift your chest up, head up. And a few breaths here, standing tall. All right, so let's head to the floor. You've already been there today. So knees bent, feet flat upon the floor. Now you did some really cool work in not smushing your lower back to the floor. Remember that? You did that led to the leg circles. So now we are going to do the other, which is to posteriorly tip your pelvis to smush your lower back into the floor. Smush is a scientific term. And then keep that posterior tilt, that sense of smushage, as you lift your pelvis up. Now that's going to get progressively harder. because tension in the iliopsoas muscles will tend to pull you out of the posterior tilt. Best you can, keep the posterior tilt. Maybe you're feeling your belly muscles involved with that. As you lift your hips up. And in my own body, I'm feeling really deep in my belly. A little bit of something. And that's going to be the tug on those iliopsoas hip flexors. So whether or not you feel that, let's take a few more breaths here. And then come on down. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more about the upper body. So to help open your chest, lightly draw your shoulders under. And the key thing here is lightly. So often people overdo that, then their lower ribs end up jammed to the ceiling. So what we're looking for is win-win. Little more breadth across your chest and collarbones. And at the same time, your lower ribs connected to your belly. And maintaining that best of both worlds, posteriorly tip your pelvis, and pause there. Back to the upper body. Take your arms, rotate them inwardly. Place your palms on the floor next to your torso. Now, if you're anything like me, this arm placement, your shoulders tend to round forward. So see if you can find that best of both worlds, chest open, arms spiraling inwardly. And maintaining that dynamic balance as you lift your hips up. And maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt. Steady breathing. And then come on down. And draw your knees in toward your armpits. If you have really long arms like I do, you could catch your elbows with your knees or catch your knees with your elbows, your choice, the order. And if you have more normal size arms, you could have your hands on your knees and lightly, gently. Sometimes people really jam in. It's not so hot. So lightly draw in with their hands or elbows and let your lower back broaden on the floor. And a few more breaths here. And then come on down. All right, so feet on the floor. I like to take my feet, excuse me, a little bit apart, and that can allow your knees to rest into each other. And if that's comfortable for you, feel free to stay. If you'd prefer to outstretch your legs, go ahead and do that. And then in terms of your hands, I like to rest my hands on my belly. But if you have another place to rest your hands that feels more comfortable, feel free to do so. And wherever you may have placed your hands, wherever you ended up with your legs, if you feel comfortable doing so, close your eyes. Whether your eyes are opened or closed, invite awareness to your forehead. And if you experience tension in your forehead, invite that tension to release. Rather than telling it to release, invite it to release. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But in this approach, then your body and whatever tension is in your body, there's not an adversarial relationship. Now let's bring that same friendly quality to your shoulders. And if you experience tension in your shoulders, invite it to relax. And this could seem symmetrical, but the shift from body as adversary to body as friend can have far-reaching benefits. So to conclude, invite awareness to some place in your body that you experience as being tense or maybe a little bit achy and sore. Then wherever that may be, whether legs or back or somewhere else, send an invitation. Invite that area to relax. That area may or may not accept your invitation. And let's take a few more breaths here, sending a friendly invitation. And then if you closed your eyes, now opening your eyes. And then come on up to sitting. All right. Super glad you could join us today. And please let your friends know. Every Saturday we do this. It's free, open to anybody and everybody. Our hopes is to facilitate calming the mind through working with the body and creating a healthier body by working with the mind and the body together. So we have some fun events coming up. A program that's a key part of our subscription service is Mindful Cardio. We bring together all the incredible many benefits of cardio in this very mindful way. I'll be doing a webinar a week from today that's free to talk more about why is cardio so important and to get into the specifics that going for a walk may or may not be cardio. And you don't necessarily have to do the super high intensity dripping with sweat stuff to get the best benefits either. That there's a really beautiful middle path for cardio that's not too hard and not too easy. And it's just like Baby Bear's oatmeal. It's just right. So link for that is in the chat today. And one of the many benefits you get from subscription is periodic free events. And I'm doing an event here in about 20 minutes that's free for subscribers that's going to be how to prevent dementia. And I know that may sound far-fetched, but emerging scientific evidence is suggesting that a significant percentage of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, is preventable. And I'm going to be going through step by step the various components to preventing dementia. And that's a program that's free for subscribers starting in about 20 minutes. So, really great to be here with you all. And if you haven't had a chance, we are doing a survey right now, which would be super helpful for us. I know some of you are subscribers, some are not. Either way, we're trying to gauge how to move forward in kind of the pandemic and what the next chapter may look like. No worries, we're committed to the online offerings, but your feedback will really help us in guiding future offerings and programs. And the link is up in the chat as well. Thanks so much.